Um, the thing is, though, it seems to me at the moment that if you just shuffle and turn a card, and if it's upright, it means yes, and if it's upside down, it means no, and you just walk away, somehow there's no human input. You know what I mean? It's you could train a dog to stand on the roof of a high building and use its tail to knock a coin off the edge of the building, and it's going to fall over, and then it's going to land in the ground. And if it's heads, it means yes. If it's tails, it means no. So you could get this, and that's sort of random. And I don't know if I would want to place that much confidence in it. And I think that's one of the things we want, is to have confidence that it's not just chance, it's not just random, that there is some kind of, we are able to make sense of an image or a card or a picture or a number, and relate it to actual human beings. Because that's the thing, I think the question is about people, because you get two football teams, 11 players, and maybe substitutes as well, and we want to know who's going to win, who's going to play better or have the luck on that particular evening. And so the question is about humans, about people. And I'm a person, and somehow we, the readers, ought to have some kind of input or some kind of role to play in reading cards. It's not just a matter of upside down or upright and yes and no. There is it's about people and life and living and how to do things properly and how to do things better. And so I was thinking of, if you get a painting by Leonardo, this happens to be part of a painting by Johannes Vermeer, who was this Dutch painter that I like. And this is a little bit from a bigger painting, and we've got this milkmaid pouring milk into this bowl thing, and you've got the bread and they've got the table. And so I think it's really very good. But when you get right down to it, all it is a piece of card, you know, and some ink. It's nothing. But I, the human being, look at it and I see significance, and I see value, and I see beauty, and I see colour, and I give this picture meaning because I'm looking at it. I took this photograph of the sky a while ago, and it's just clouds, but it looks to me like a Chinese horse here without its foreleg, and it's just clouds, but it looks to me like motion and vibrant behaviour on the part of the animal, and I like it. But all it is a piece of card and some ink on a glossy surface. Whereas I look at it and it comes alive to me, and I think that's what we should be considering as well with the tarot. It's because people look at cards, and people look at combinations of cards, and we see significance, we see meaning. We make the tarot work, and we make the tarot, we give it presence and power, and I think we ought to include us in the reading rather than just use coins, or rather than just use a yes no, even though a yes no answer is useful at times. Okay, let me just check the time. Okay, that's 11 minutes, and I keep going over, and I want to do this in under 10 minutes, but that's not going to work. So, okay, I wanted to say something about being right and wrong, because I'm making this video for people like you who read the tarot, and not just for the person who asked the question. And I'd like to talk for a minute about being right and wrong, because you give people answers, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. And so let's say somebody says, is such and such a thing going to happen? And you say yes and it doesn't, or you say no and it does, then you're wrong. Sometimes maybe it means that you're just a bad reader. But I want to remind you that sometimes giving the right answer isn't a good idea. And you have to remember that. Because some people, if you give them the correct answer, they just understand out of all proportion. There's one time years ago I was doing a reading for this young woman, and she wanted to know about her boyfriend, and we talked about this and that, and then I said to her, and what does Bill think about this? And she said, how do you know his name was Bill? Because she hadn't told me. So the thing was, she had taken a pen and she'd drawn a little heart on the back of her hand, and then she'd written Bill inside it. So I figured this is a boyfriend and his name was Bill. So at that moment, I told her, you wrote his name in the back of your hand. At that moment, I could have said, well, you know, I know this kind of stuff. It's part of my power. She would have been eating out my hands. And I could have told her anything and she would have believed it, because how could I know his name? So, with some people, so let's say somebody asks you a question and they want to know, is such and such a thing going to happen? If you were wrong, don't worry about it. Because some people, if you're right, they fall in love with you, in which case you can do no wrong, and they start harassing you, or they put you on a pedestal and they tell their friends, and so people have got elevated expectations of you and your ability and what you can do, and all it does is it leads to a whole lot of trouble. So ideally we want to be right all the time, I suppose, but we should realize that we can't, or it's not always a good idea to be correct, or that there can be protection for you, the reader, if you're sometimes wrong. It can also mean that if you're getting big-headed, you know, sometimes you think you know the answer to every question that anybody's ever asked, and sometimes you need to be, you know, have your ego deflated a bit and be brought back to earth. So that can be another reason why you're wrong. But sometimes it's the people, you can't give them the truth, or you can't always give people the correct answer. Having said all that, I'm expecting that the answer that I get here is going to be correct about who's going to win this game. But at the same time, I'm not thinking, I want to be right, I want to be right. Because what I'm thinking is, let's see if we can learn to read tarot cards that much better. So I don't know how long this is, probably 14 minutes, and I'm thinking of YouTube and their 10-minute limit. So what I think I want to do is I'm going to switch off the camera for the moment, and then I'll switch on again, and having done some shuffling, and then I'll choose a couple of cards for who's going to win the game. And I may splice things together, but we'll see what happens.